Are you tired of feeling like your content is stuck in a rut, failing to reach the audience it deserves to reach? Scaling your content can be the key to unlocking new growth and engagement, but it requires more than just producing more content. Makes sense, right? Stay tuned for the next episode of Strategy Talks, where we talk about scaling your content. If you're ready, so am I. Stay tuned.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Here's your host, Morin-van.
Hi, everybody. Another episode of Strategy Talks. I am so glad you're here with us. If you're here live, let us know in the comments whether you're joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. For those of you who listen to Strategy Talks week after week, I want to welcome you to our listeners, our podcast listeners. We appreciate you. Without much further ado, we're going to talk about content scaling today. And my friend Donna is here. So I'm going to bring her right up onto the stage with me. Hi, Donna. How are you?
Hey, Doreen. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about content scaling. Both you and I create a lot of content. Let's put this myth out of the way right away. Content scaling doesn't mean creating more content, just more, right?
Correct. 100%. But everybody doesn't know that. I feel
like right. So what is it? Let's talk about what you mean when you talk about content scaling strategies.
And so if I talk to people and they are trying to figure out how to produce more, I always go back to the basics, and it's what's the goal? Every good content person will say, well, what is your goal? And if it is to gain more followers or to get more leads, you'd have to drill down a little bit more. And a lot of times people don't necessarily know what the more looks like. So just getting really granular with that goal. And then the second thing is, who's your audience? Are you talking to your audience? Are you saying the things that they want to hear? But if you don't know your audience, or you think your audience is different than who it actually is, it's kind of a problem, right? And I'm sure you've seen it too. Like we have our own fan friends, right? So anytime we post, within like 5 minutes, they're all liking it and loving it and commenting.
Sure.
But that's probably not our audience. But it's really cool when I look at anything that I produce on LinkedIn, and I am a terrible, do what I say, not what I do. I don't produce a lot of my own content. I ghostwrite. My husband and I ghostwrite. He produces all of his content. But it's this idea of, who are we talking to? What second connections or third connections are out there, and looking into them and saying, oh, well, I wonder who this person works for and what they do. And what did I say about this post? So instead of just kind of making content for content's sake, going back and saying, oh, well, what did all of these people really like about it? Why did they engage with this? And then let me talk more about that in depth. And it doesn't have to be, I was listening to your podcast earlier this week, and it doesn't have to be these highly produced videos. It doesn't have to be highly produced writing. You don't have to have an editor go through and edit it professionally for you. Just getting it out there, done is better than not.
Not. Yeah, no, for sure. I 100% agree with that. Content scaling. I think the hardest step sometimes is the first one, right? Deciding that you're going to create content. So what is it in it for businesses? What are some of the outcomes of content scaling that people can expect before we start talking about what it looks like?
Yeah. So, more eyes, you're reaching bigger audiences. From a value standpoint, I always start with value. From a value standpoint, what is the message that you want to get out there? And if you're actually getting that message out there, if you're producing the content, if you're putting yourself out into the world and giving it to the universe, then you're helping others, because you shouldn't be saying anything that's not valuable.
That makes right. So as we're scaling content, let's talk quality of content, right? What does it look like when we produce more? Are we doing more content in less time? Are we figuring out quicker systems? Are we sacrificing quality? What are we doing?
Yes. Yes to all of those things.
I love that.
Right. So I feel like authentic content is the best. And everyone's talking about authenticity in this age of AI. And it is really important. And everyone's authentic looks different, right?
Sure.
And at the end of the day, you kind of just have to be you. And if that and I've seen it a lot with major creators, they kind of avoid punctuation, or there are typos. And some people would say, oh, that's poor quality content. But what are they actually saying? Can you look past the typo? Because they had this brilliant idea and they just put it out into the world as quickly as they could. And that's, I mean, like I said, as a writer, it drives me insane when I see typos but also I'm like, oh, well, I'm a perfectionist. And so I won't put stuff out there because of that, and to get over that barrier. So quality looks different from different angles, but you could talk about the same thing several different ways. And people repost posts all the time that were really good. And you take this snapshot, and thanks to the algorithm, it's this snapshot in time that if you get a bajillion likes or comments or engagements or reposts, whatever that looks like for you, and you never talk about that again, or you never repost that again, then you're really missing out. And you don't have to go and create something new. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just go back and look at some of those comments and say, oh, this is what this person took away. And you'll find a theme. There's always a trend in the comments on what you're speaking to. And that's a great way to either repost to figure out what you want to repost without creating something new, or to just dive a little deeper. Because if you're talking about it, likely you're an expert on it, and you can go next level deeper. And the deeper you get, the more value you provide, the better quality your audience perceives it.
All right. I have a question, and this is like a very tactical question, I guess. So when you're talking about reposting it, so would you recommend, because you don't really know necessarily, would you recommend reposting the same video or image with new copy, or would your first instinct be you reuse the copy and put a new image with it? Like, as a copywriter, as a writer, what would you do?
Okay, caveat, I'm not a social media expert,
Okay.
But if it performed well, I've tested out. That's the thing. So I would just rerun it. I wouldn't just copy paste it. Now, anybody is allowed to, in the comments, say, no, don't do that. But I'm a big believer in testing. You don't know until you do it, and then try it out. Now, when I say repost, I don't mean repost the next week. Pick a time, make it timely, make sure it's relevant at that time. And right. I think you would probably get dinged by whichever platform. I just do LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. If you were to repost the exact same thing all the time, and people would get tired of seeing it. But, it makes sense at different times to post about something. And it could be a personal reason why you're reposting it. Maybe it's something that you learned at this conference, and you attended another conference later that year, and you wanted to repost about an experience or what you learned, and maybe you saw it mirrored at that other conference. And that wasn't a great example because the conferences like you to hashtag them, and that's very timely.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
But something like that. Yeah.
How important is it to understand and to look at metrics when you're trying to scale? What is something basic? If, say, maybe you're not a social media manager, maybe somebody's listening, watching, and they're a business owner, right? And yes. They've got somebody working for them, a marketer, and they're like, well, I want to ask how my posts are performing, and I want to scale. But what KPIs, what should they focus on? What should they ask their marketer to present to them? Because we all know, no matter what happens, you can skew a report either way or the other way, right?
Oh, yeah.
We can manipulate our numbers if we need to, and just close your ears if that's something that you don't want to talk about. But for sure, we know we can, right? Yes. So if you're not familiar with these numbers and what's happening, might see a couple more likes, but that's really not what we need. What are some of the things that we need to look at when we talk about getting ready to scale and repurpose and repost things?
So something that I look at is the second and third connections. So from a marketing manager standpoint, they're going to throw all the data at you. And like you said, the data is only as good as the presenter, whoever is providing it.
Sure.
But and people get really excited about lots of engagement if they have this post went viral, but what did that actually achieve? What was the goal of the post? Was it to go viral? Was it to get more followers? Was it to get more leads? Was it to get downloads? What was the goal of the post? Was it just to put it out there? The best post that I ever did was me just being really pissed off about COVID because my kids were babies when they got COVID. And we did everything. We wore masks, all this stuff. We got COVID and I was livid. And I had a video of my son. He was miserable and he was screaming and rolling around on the ground. And he was not even 2. And I was so angry. And best post, I had 66,000, like 67,000, whatever, engagements, something like that.
Yeah.
But that didn't do anything. Nobody contacted me and said, hey, do you want to write for me or anything like that? But I didn't need that. That wasn't the reason for my post. I was just angry and I needed a platform to let it out. And that was my goal. And I did that and that was great. But for businesses, you shouldn't be putting things out there that you don't want to be known for or talk about. And yes, engagements, I would say, are important. You're looking at impressions. You also have to keep in mind, they change the algorithm all the time. And unless you have some secret algorithm expert on your team, that can share the formula for it, you're just kind of testing. But definitely, if something's being reposted, that's a really big deal. And LinkedIn rewards you for reposts. But who is reposting it? Is it someone you don't know? Are they sharing it with an audience that wouldn't have seen you because they're a third connection? So I like to look a lot at the connections and say, oh, if I have, yes, my usual fan friends will click, and engage and to get more eyeballs on it for the exposure. But I started looking at, okay, second connections, third connections. What does that mean? Who is their audience and what are they interested in and what are they talking about? And that gave me ideas on, I can dive deeper into this, or they don't know this, or this is an industry that I hadn't thought of, or a community maybe that might need support or help, anything like that. So I haven't really heard people talk that much about looking at the different, how many degrees away they are.
I think it is a brilliant strategy, actually. I started noticing that recently. So if you've been following Strategy Talks for 3.5 years, you know that every season is a little different. And this is a season of strategic thinkers. Hence, I invited you, Donna, to come on. And these strategic thinkers are getting me thinking a lot deeper than I have before and coming up with ideas and strategies that are really helpful. And what's happening, not only that, the people that I've invited are now also introducing me in a much different level to their audience. Yes. So I've had guests talk about me, not just, I was on Doreen's podcast, but hey, I'm following Doreen's content. She said something cool. Check this out. I'm getting tagged, which means I get in front of a second and third audience. And I am seeing a huge uptick in connections. So I love that you said that, because that is literally what I've been seeing in the 2 months that I've restarted Strategy Talks season 4, is that this is like a new I feel like I've unlocked, I don't know what the name in the game is, but like next level, level LinkedIn, ding, 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 ding. You got it, Doreen. And I think part of that is with the quality of people that you surround yourself with, but not just surround yourself, that you interact with on LinkedIn. So I love that. So let's go to automation. We're talking about content scaling strategies. We're in the age of AI, 2025. And a year ago, I would have asked you, and most people on my show said, I might use ChatGPT. That's literally all I got. Now, everybody's using it for everything. You're a writer. We're talking about content scaling. What do we need to know? Tools, yes, no, automation. Let's have it.
That was a question I got asked this week. I was at a conference this week, and every person that I talked to said, "Oh, you're right. Do you use AI? What are your thoughts on AI? Kind of waiting for that. And I remember when AI first came out and I told my husband, I was like, I'm never going to be able to have a job. Like, it's my job. I need to find a new career path. I need to go back to just, digital marketing or something. He's like, no, you just need to learn to use the tool. And he was right. I mean, and we come up with prompts, you train AI. I will say we never copy and paste. It's more of an ideation tool. We use ChatGPT. We use a paid version. It's $22-ish a month, I think. But we also pair it with Grammarly now because Grammarly does a plagiarism check. So I would highly recommend, if you do the paid version of Grammarly, to run all your content through that. I don't love Grammarly as a tool in general because I think that it's wrong a lot with grammar. And also everything that we learned on how to write in elementary school is wrong. Like, you break all the rules now. You can start sentences with conjunctions. You can, you can have a complete sentence that's not actually a complete sentence, like a full idea. It doesn't have to have a subject and a verb and all of these things. But that said, I do use ChatGPT. I use Perplexity a lot for research.
That's the one I love for research, but also for some deep thinking and as a sparring partner, because I know you work with your husband. I work mostly alone. I've got a couple assistants, but when I want to think about like, what questions am I going to ask my podcast guests? I don't just show up here. I look at your website, I get your bio, I look at the topic, you self-identify to me what you're an expert in. So I put all that information in Perplexity and say, this time I want to go deep, or this time don't go too deep because the topic is really hard. Like, I talked to Christopher Penn and we're going to talk about generative AI. And I'm like, I literally told the tool, we're not going to go deep. Like, the first question needs to be define generative AI to somebody who doesn't know what it is. And Christopher and I stayed, we did go deep, but not too deep. But with you, I was like, okay, I need to go a little bit deeper and get better questions. So yeah, absolutely. I use that tool too, but I love that sparring partner thing where, I just have a thought. What do you think of it? And it's really, really helpful. I love that one.
It is. And I think people think when we talk about writing with AI, if I need a word or an example, or if I need to shorten something, I'm really wordy when I write. I'm not an organized writer off the bat. It outlines things for me. And then I look at the outline and it organizes my thoughts enough to take what it says and write it out myself. Like, I never copy and paste, or I come up with something and I can't get it quite right. And it'll give me that extra word, or I'll take I'll be like, I love this sentence that it has. And then I just kind of rearrange it, or I make it my own. But it's great. It's kind of cloning yourself a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think I'm smarter than AI. IQ wise, knowledge wise, I mean, it can pull up all the things that would take me hours. That's why I like Perplexity, and Perplexity provides the links. It provides the sources for you. I don't use Perplexity to write. Last time Chris Penn and I were together, he was showing me how to use Gemini to create speaker reels. And I thought that was really cool. I haven't gone any deeper into that since he showed me in November. I just haven't had time, but I think that's a different way because I hadn't used Gemini, and they're all basically the same. And you get more if you pay for more, as you know.
Right.
But if you just need to play around, you're not going to break it. I
love that. That's a good quote. Just play around with AI. You're not going to break it. I love that.
Yes. And so before you decide to pay for something, play with it. ChatGPT you can play with. You can't do all of the features, but just think, if you use it to a certain level, especially for people that are just starting out, or if they have really tight budgets, use all the free tools and find out which one you like best, and then pay for that next level. But I will say, if you were writing with an AI tool, get some kind of plagiarism check software, even if you have to pay for it, because that is going to keep a lot of those legal headaches out of the picture, or at least help keep those legal headaches out of the picture. Yeah. But I think that's really important. And then, like you said, a sparring partner, a lot of times we'll put in a prompt and we'll feed it information, and we'll say, answer yes when you've read this. because sometimes it'll just start generating whatever it thinks it should. Like if you just give it stuff. So you need to really reel it in. I haven't said this, and I feel bad about it, but my husband he won't get mad at me for it, but he'll tell me he's not a details guy. So like if I text him the grocery list and I add anything to it, he's like, after that first text, like I'm not scrolling down to look at the rest of the list, even if you send it, like consider it not there. And I was thinking about how I was doing something in ChatGPT the other day, and I was like, oh, I just need to talk to ChatGPT like it's a man, like more big picture. But if you give them the details, if you tell them exactly what you need it to do, it'll most likely do it to the best of its ability. Right. And that's not a slam on men. It's just kind of how it is. I'm like, oh, Steven needs me to tell him exactly, like, do this exactly, whatever that is. And you kind of train ChatGPT like you would someone else to do your laundry. Like what can go in the washing machine? What are the settings? What needs to be pulled out before it goes in the dryer? What are the dryer settings? Like, do you know what I mean? Like all the things, you have to really think about it. And when it comes to that, he was telling me, okay, well, if you make sure that you say, ask me any questions, what am I missing? Feel free to ask me questions if I don't give you enough information. And that I feel like is kind of that sparring side as well. Or what could be wrong with this? Like this upset, and that's off the top of my head asking who I haven't asked who this might upset, but ask it to ask you questions, because that's a great way to kind of plug in any holes or fill in any of those gaps.
Yeah, I actually think that's one of what you just reminded me of is Christopher Penn saying, don't just ask what it should include. Actually ask these AI models what's missing. That's actually where you can use it the best. I have all this stuff. I have this content strategy, or I have this social media strategy, or I have this whatever strategy. What's missing? They're very good at finding the loopholes or the holes in what you have. So if nothing else, that's a good way to find those holes by asking those questions.
Absolutely. And if you're trying to scale and you're just kind of blanking out on ideas, ask it to go deeper on one. So you have for content. What is content? Or how do I scale my content? And then you can break that down. Well, you can do more on this platform, or you can change the medium, or you can atomize it. You can take one piece of content, like this podcast, like what you're doing. You have it on YouTube, you have it at live streaming, it's going to be in podcast form. You could write a blog post on it if you wanted. You're going to take it and probably put it on LinkedIn to link to. I mean, that's the same content. You just atomized it. You broke it into all these different pieces in different mediums and different platforms. While you're not really creating anything new, you could take the transcript of this and just put it in interview form if you wanted, and post the interview as a blog post. Right. I mean, there's so many ways to scale without having to make it overcomplicated or seem too daunting, because the last thing we all want to do is add one more thing to our plate.
Yeah. So actually this leads me to the next question, which is perfect. So you're talking about doing all these things. Is there a tool that you use or something specific to figure out how to automate and semi-automate, or at least record that workflow of what you just said? So for example, like you have a podcast and you get the transcript and you do an interview, it becomes a blog, and now it's a clip, and now it's, what process do you use? Because that's a great way to scale, right? To have a piece of content. And that's one of the reasons I've done this show for going on 4 years, is that it gives me enough content for every day of the week on every platform, right? Because we're talking about content scaling strategies. Believe me, all week, if you're watching this live, you'll be hearing about content strategies all week, because we're talking about scaling. That's what we're doing, because the long form gives me that, and I can do all kinds of stuff with it. So automation or workflow, how does somebody develop that? Do you have a tool for that? Do you put that on paper? Like, let's talk about it.
I should put it on paper. Thank you. We actually just created I call it, a one-sheeter. I'm pretty sure it's 2 pages. But if somebody wants information about the company, what is it like to work with you? And I wrote out the world's longest email. And then I attached the 2-pager and I hit send, and I was like, oh, that was dumb. Like, that was, because I said all of it. it was just too much.
Too much.
And then
Okay.
I was like, and that was the point of the 2-pager that I attached, 1-pager, 2-pager that I attached, but that made me outline our workflow at least. So in terms of, so I guess I have the workflow down from the client side. So what do you get from me, and what can you expect timeline wise, and how many rounds of revisions and all of those things. And then for me, backtracking that. So my process is I get all the information as a writer, again, as a content writer. People will do it differently depending on their role.
Sure.
As a content writer, I send out a brief, and I can copy and paste a brief into ChatGPT if I need to make an outline from that brief. But if I get a recording, we use Descript, we use Fathom, we used to use Otter, and record whatever we could, as long as our clients allowed us to record it. And even just between me and Steven, when we brainstorm, we will sit and I'll record our calls, because someday I want to start a podcast. And he said, no, that's too much work. Because I was like, there are not enough good tactical writing resources in audio form, I would say. So for people that want to listen and kind of get ideas. So, but that's
I can give, this is the reason why I do the live show, right? Because I show up for 30 minutes, and that is the core of my content strategy, and has been for 3.5 years now. Is I do this show, I have amazing guests, I have a topic, and then that's the topic of the week. I mean, it doesn't get much harder than that, right? Or easier than that. That's it. So, I think you're right. I do think people would listen to, writing strategies and content writers.
We talk about that process a lot. Like I'll say, how did you write this post? Or how did you come up with the outline for this? Or how did you structure this? And structure is so important. My husband is a better writer than I am. I learn from him every day. I'm better at branding, tone, and voice, and editing and looking at something. And I'm better with the short form. And he's great with a blank page. You give me a blank page, it will take me 10 hours to write a crappy first draft, and I'll have to go back and edit it 100,000 times. Will it look amazing when it's done? Absolutely. Is it the ugliest thing you've seen? And will it take like 7 rounds of revisions? Absolutely. So that was not a good use of my time. It wasn't a good use of his time when I'm like, read this, tell me what's wrong with it. He's like, let's just start over. So there was a big learning process there. But now with all the tools that are available, like I said, we use Descript, we use Fathom, we'll take transcripts, we will we'll set a goal. And so we can say the goal of this piece of content is, or we're writing a LinkedIn post for this executive. Here's their tone of voice. We've created custom GPTs for them for brand tones and voice, again, to get ideas flowing, to make sure that it's relatively aligned. So you're not starting from scratch every time. And from a scale perspective, it really helps, because as anybody knows, if you have to start from scratch, that blank piece of paper every time, you're probably going to go clean the house. Like there's something else that you could be doing and feeling more productive with that instant, dopamine hit or whatever it is. Like, oh, look, it's a clean house. Still a blank page.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll take transcripts, we'll feed them into ChatGPT, we'll set goals for them. The goal of this post is or here's your audience. Like the more information that you can give it, then the better it will do. And then from there, we'll edit it down and look at it and come up with a hook. And does this match? We can feed in former LinkedIn posts. We can feed in what people have said comments wise. Yeah. So a lot of times people will respond to comments, but are you actually looking into the comment? Like we talked about trends and comments. It's just like looking at a recorded sales call. What were the frequently asked questions? What would the frequently asked questions be that you would put on your website? The questions that the prospect is asking with all of your sales teams.
Sure, makes sense.
Absolutely. So why not do that for yourself? It's the same thing. So you put something out there, and then that's how you can get ideas. And then you can feed those ideas into a tool like ChatGPT. If it's a research thing, like I said, Perplexity. Steven uses Glasp.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that one.
It's free, and you can get like a YouTube transcript or video transcript. I think it's just for YouTube actually, right away to see how that goes. If you're big on hooks for your LinkedIn, he uses Clio. And I keep saying my husband, because I have deemed him he's our chief technology officer. He he doesn't know that. It's his it's his second job.
Title. It's his title. I love it. I love it. Well, these are all great. I've not heard of Clio, so I'm gonna go check that out.
KL.
Yeah. So we're actually at 30 minutes right now, which is crazy because I feel like we could talk another hour. But I had one question. We're gonna do this really fast, and then I want people to know where to connect with you. You and I met at the B2B Forum in Boston 2 years in a row. It was a great connection. I loved our connection, but I want other people to get to know you here on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever. But before we do, anything that you see as an emerging trend within the writer community that's happening in 2025, you have any predictions? Or I actually don't love predictions, but anything that you see coming or that you think that might be happening that we need to know about? And if not, let's talk about where to find you and how to connect with you.
You're like, you're like, I'm not going to edit this out. So honestly, people are talking a lot about authenticity. I think that should have been talked about a long, long time ago. I'll be curious to see how people weave that in, because people were inauthentic before AI. So like now it's this new topic. I mean, just be yourself, put out into the world how you want others to see you. And I think that people are going to try to do more of that. I think with all of these tools like this, there are 14,000 tech tools, the thing that they do every year, the picture, I forget who started it. Anyway, where it started with like 10 and then it expands and now they're teeny tiny and you have to use you have to use a microscope basically to see each logo now. But there's going to be more tech tools because everybody has a great idea that can make this simpler or better. Sadly, I think that a lot of the free tools are probably going to be pay to play later on. They're going to have to figure out ways to monetize that. So I think that that'll be something that'll be interesting. But I've just seen lots of writing groups pop up and people talking more about the process and feeling and putting giving transparency to that. Okay. As opposed to just kind of keeping it hidden, because everyone's process is different. Everyone thinks differently. The outputs will be different. It doesn't make anyone better than anyone else. So I'll be curious to see from a writing standpoint, how much people talk about how much they share and how automated they'll make their writing, because I know I'm not going to be automating my writing anymore.
I think this would make a great podcast right here. This last piece, I'm going to send this to you, the transcript of this. And then convince you to create a podcast. We need that, Donna. Where can people meet you? You said LinkedIn, that is the place where you're most active. For those who are listening, can you just state your first and last name so they can look you up on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Donna Mostrom, Mostrom.
Excellent.
And I'm with Damn Smart Marketing. So if you look at that, you'll see the Damn Smart Marketing banner.
Awesome. And I'll, of course, link to it in the show notes. If you're listening to this, they'll be in the show notes. And also, if you're watching this on the replay, if you stayed all the way to the end, we really appreciate you. Want to make sure that you know that we always appreciate our live watchers and listeners. If you have any further questions, please put them below in the comments. Donna and I will be monitoring and we'll be happy to answer anything about writing or any of the tools that she mentioned. And scale your content. Don't just produce more.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really what we talked about.
What's the one takeaway? Just do that.
Just do that. But I think it was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And, I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks and another strategic thinker. Thank you so much for being with us today. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Doreen.